London Underground was doing what it always did, moving people, not connecting them. It was early morning rush hour, packed, loud, and emotionally absent in the way big cities often are. Bodies filled the same space, but lived in completely different worlds. Screens, thoughts, routines, fatigue. Everyone sealed inside invisible walls. Nothing here was supposed to matter. Nothing here was supposed to change anything. But then, a woman broke. Not in a way that demanded attention, in a way that tried not to. At first, it was almost unnoticeable. A stiffness in her posture, a silence that didn't match the rhythm of the carriage, a breath held too long, as if releasing it would mean losing control completely. People noticed, and did what they always do. Nothing. That's the rule in places like this, until her voice slipped through. Not loud, not clear, just fragments that didn't belong in public air. Doctors, treatments, waiting rooms, test after test that led nowhere. Hope that restarted, only to collapse again. And then, a word, repeated like something breaking under pressure. A child. That word didn't fit the train. It didn't fit the routine of strangers pretending not to exist together. It felt too personal for a place designed for anonymity, and yet it spread through the silence anyway. Because pain like that doesn't need volume, it needs presence. A few seats away, someone was listening. Her name was Sarah. She didn't turn. Not immediately. Not instinctively. She stayed still. Not disconnected, but controlled. The kind of stillness that doesn't interrupt suffering. It absorbs it. Emma, by the window, kept speaking without realizing she wasn't alone anymore, as if the carriage had quietly erased the boundary between private collapse and public space, between what is carried inside and what accidentally escapes. Sarah listened differently, not just to what was said, but to what repeated, to what avoided itself. She heard patterns beneath the fragments. Doctors, procedures, waiting, hope, failure, repeat. But more than that, she noticed the absence inside the story. A missing future, a sentence Emma no longer completed even in her own mind. Then the train slowed. A station approached. The carriage shifted. Sound rushed in, bodies moved. Reality briefly disrupted the emotional gravity. And in that moment of interruption, Sarah stood up. No hesitation, no visible internal conflict. She walked straight toward Emma, and for the first time, Emma looked up. What Sarah said next didn't belong in that space, not in a moving train, not between two strangers who were supposed to disappear from each other's lives within minutes. Because she didn't offer comfort, she didn't offer advice. She offered something that felt structurally impossible in a moment like this, a possibility. She told Emma she had been listening, properly listening. And then she said it, clearly without hesitation, without softness that would weaken the meaning. She could help her become a mother, not emotionally, not symbolically, but through a deeply personal biological donation. For a moment, nothing happened. Not because Emma didn't understand, but because the human mind rejects certain sentences before it accepts them. The train kept moving. But inside that carriage, time didn't. Emma sat frozen between disbelief and something she had buried so deep, she almost didn't recognize it anymore. Hope. But hope after loss doesn't feel gentle. It feels unstable, like something that might collapse again the moment it's touched. And that makes it more terrifying than absence. Sarah wasn't detached from what she had said either. She knew exactly what she was offering. Not help in the abstract sense, but a permanent, irreversible shift in two lives that had collided without warning. And still, she didn't step back. Silence thickened between them. Not empty silence, dense silence, the kind that carries consequence inside it. Emma finally looked at her properly. Not guarded, not defensive, just stripped of everything except truth, human truth. Her voice came out broken, barely formed, but it carried years of weight inside a single moment. One word. Yes, not certainty, not clarity, but the smallest possible acceptance of something she had stopped believing could return. Time resumed after that, but differently. Life continued in its normal shape. Days, appointments, routines, distance. Yet underneath it, something irreversible had already started moving. Private decisions, medical processes, quiet, structured steps unfolding away from public awareness. Two lives that had intersected in a moving carriage remained separate, but no longer unrelated. Something invisible now existed between them. Not friendship, not obligation, something more fragile and more permanent. A shared consequence, a beginning. And then, months later, a child was born, not as coincidence, not as narrative convenience,
but as the outcome of a moment no one else on that train had recognized while it was happening. A moment that looked ordinary from the outside, but never was, because it came from something almost extinct in modern life. A stranger choosing to act without reward, certainty, or permission. Not because it made sense, but because it was possible. And maybe that's the part we fail to notice most. Not that extraordinary things exist, but that they often begin quietly, inside ordinary ones. So the question remains, if you had been there in that carriage, would you have noticed? Would you have listened? Would you have spoken? Or would you have done what almost everyone does every day, and stayed safely inside your own world, while someone else's life changed only a few steps away? Because the hardest truth is not that rare moments exist, it's that we pass through them constantly, without ever realizing